to West Tigers podcast, episode number 294, another edition of the off-season version of the West Tigers podcast, but a very, very special edition podcast. And we've got almost everybody here. Eddie is off on cricket duty, so Eddie's not available, but it was fantastic to hear him on the West Tigers podcast last week.
One episode, Joel. One episode.
That's right. He broke his self-imposed ban. I thought we weren't going to see him till February, but he was here. But he has sent in one word. We're going to start this podcast, as we quite often do, with one word. And it's one word to describe the announcement today, one word to describe the changes that have occurred at the West Tigers. And Eddie's one word is victory. So that's Eddie's one word. Steve, good evening to you. One word to describe all that went down this afternoon and today.
Hey, Joel. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my one word is opportunity. I think we are now presented with an incredible opportunity to get things right and move forward positively for a club. I think we were all feeling quite hopeless, no hope. And I think today we may have some, but for me, it's opportunity. We've now got a great opportunity to take this club and make it into the club that we all know it can be.
All right, very good opportunity. I like that. Declan is here as well. Hello, Declan. One word, please.
I think my one word is accountability, which we talk a lot about on the podcast, and I think it can be argued that the Tigers, throughout a lot of their period, haven't really shown real accountability. But to the Home and Barnes Group's credit, I think it just shows that they've taken the voice of the fans, they've implemented a review, and they've held themselves accountable by even asking people within the Home and Barnes Group who sit on the West Tigers board to stand down. And I think that's really commendable because it shows that they are accountable for their actions and they do have the best interests of the club at heart. Because you wouldn't do that if you didn't genuinely care about the club.
Accountability, I like it. It's good to see Kelly Hollis and hear Kelly Hollis on the West Tigers podcast. Hello, Kelly. You've got one word for us.
I do, Joel. Thanks for having me, guys. My word for today is uniting. Just by spending the day on social media, I was quite distracted by the news and couldn't really focus on much else. But for the first time in a long time, the fan base was really coming together. I posted on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it these days about all those people who said that if change occurred, they'd become members. And I had 20 people reply to me, multiple people screenshotting their membership that they'd signed up this afternoon. So I think the membership team is going to be pretty busy over the next couple of days.
Yep. Yeah, okay, uniting, which is good, because I did see some posts somewhere where they were talking about why are we even bothering having a review. Some very pessimistic people in the last couple of weeks, but vindicated is a good word because I feel like we've been vindicated. Uniting, accountability, opportunity, victory. Garry Watson, what is your one word?
Look, I'm going to combine some of what everyone has kind of said. I'm going to go with new dawn. It is an opportunity for a new dawn for this club. It's an opportunity for us to finally get this club right and strong and successful. It's an opportunity to do away with the anchors that have held us back in the past. And by anchors, I'm not talking about people. One thing I don't want to be tonight is highly critical of people who have been in these roles because their time is up now. But the structure of our club has been an issue and an anchor for this club for a long time. The factions between Balmain and West were an issue for a long time. This is a chance to have a new dawn and a new structure moving forward. That's a professional structure. It's a structure that is needed for a modern-day professional sporting organisation that we say that we are. And as long as we get these changes implemented in the right way, this is a new dawn for our club, and it's a massive opportunity for this club moving forward. And I really like what Declan said about accountability. For a long time, our club has said we're accountable for what happens. We're accountable for these poor results. And this is the first time where we've actually seen those people saying that who have shown some accountability. And credit to the Holman Barnes Group. They have done a great thing today. They've put the club before their own personal interests. And that's what sets us up for the future.
And if we ever do a review into the West Tigers podcast, we'll be asking the question why we can't have one word when I ask for one word, but we get 3 words, a new dawn. But anyway, I'm not going to be a stickler for the rules. Just picking up on what Kelly said about membership too, I will renew as well. So you can add me to that list. I'm really happy with what's happened, and I'm going to come back as a member as well, and hopefully for the long term this time. A Christmas miracle, we could use that as one word if we were going to use a little bit of license and make it
that's 3
like
words, Joel.
Yes. My word is broom. Steve, the broom really has been. It's really sweeping changes. Are you a bit shocked that the Holman Barnes group went this far?
I am. I was hopeful that we would go to this extreme. I think I said in a pod not too long ago that unless there were massive change, I was going to find it extremely difficult to stay positive about the club and continue to support the club. I just thought if there was a tokenistic one person was ousted, I just didn't think that was going to be enough. I think it's been obvious through the review, and I think, to be honest, before that we needed wholesale change. We needed new ideas. We needed more attention to detail, if I dare say it again. And I think we've now got the opportunity to get it. So yeah, I am surprised, but I am really glad that that's what's happened. I don't think they've gone too far.
We were lucky enough to actually have time with Garry Barnier, who has been heavily involved in this review. And from the time we met him, I was very confident and I was very impressed with him. I was very confident that the club was going to receive recommendations that would be a positive for our club. I was worried that the Holman Barnes group may not have that internal strength to implement those changes themselves. But I'm so pleased to see that they followed through with the review that was conducted by Tony Crawford and Garry Barnier. I think those guys have done a wonderful job of identifying the issues in our club and putting forward recommendations to improve the club. And I'm just so pleased that the Holman Barnes group not only listened to the fans when the fans called for this through the petition that we set up, but also they listened to the guys they put in charge of doing this review. Even when the news coming out of the review and the results and the findings coming out of the review weren't exactly what the club probably wanted to hear or probably expected to hear.
Kelly, I'll throw to you. Declan didn't come along to the meeting. He wasn't available that we had with Garry Barnier, but I guess those words, thorough and exhaustive, sort of come to mind. That was the feeling that I got. This was a real deep dive into so many different layers of the organisation. That's why I'm really glad to see that significant change has been made. It's very validating for our concerns that we raised about so many different aspects of the club.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it felt like the day, it was quite a few hours that we spent with Garry. We really went into everything that we'd wanted to talk about with him in terms of what we'd heard from the fans as part of the Ambush fan forum that we did, as well as people who had contacted through the podcast. And I think the way that Garry spoke about how he was conducting the review, I think that it sort of surprised us, even at that point, on how deep he was going with the review, that there were many, many people both inside and outside the club and some pretty high stakes people in the NRL itself that were getting involved in this review. And yeah, I think that it makes me wonder that if this is sort of the first of the recommendations that are being put in action, are there going to be other things that flow through from this? And this is sort of just the initial, as you said, putting the broom through the board and getting that change happening at that level so that these other recommendations could potentially be brought into place or implemented as we move into 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. Declan, I think the main thing that you've got guys there on the Holman Barnes group that have voted themselves out of that position on the West Tigers board, which everybody kind of was worried that was going to be the stumbling block. But to their credit, they have looked at the bigger picture. I think the people that have made those decisions are worth a pat on the back, because I think what without reading the review, but my gut feeling is that there is a feeling that the people that were on the West Tigers board maybe didn't quite have the skill set to run an NRL team in 2023, 2024. That kind of is the feeling that I get out of it all. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I do feel the same. I think that I'm with you, Joe. I think whenever we talk about the review, and if we were confident that what needed to be done would be done, I wasn't confident at all. I thought that was going to be the biggest stumbling block, actually getting people off the board and implementing new people, trying to get that fresh change. I thought that people like Lee, obviously with the sponsorship, that was going to be a hurdle, and then the people that were in the Home and Barnes Group board and on the West Tigers board, I thought for sure that they weren't going to fall on their own swords. But credit to them, I think that they've come to the realization, because a lot of those guys have been there since the merger, which is a really long time ago. So you'd have to say that there's lots of data and lots of evidence to suggest that that they probably didn't quite know what they were doing, because we never really had prolonged long-term success. So yeah, I think this review probably showed that maybe their area of expertise isn't in running a footy department or a football club, and hopefully we can now get people that have experience in that field.
Steve, Justin Pascoe, his legacy, no doubt you would say that his legacy is that centre of excellence. 9 years as CEO, I think probably you and I might share the same sort of opinion that that's probably about the amount of time that you want your CEO at the top. I think it's probably time for a bit of rejuvenation at that level. But what do you think Justin's highlights are of his time here?
Look, of recent time, there's been a little bit of debate on the socials about his role in the financial recovery of West Tigers. There are some out there saying that, with the amount of money that's splashed about from the NRL, it's really hard not to become financial. But I would just like to put a counter argument to that and say that I think Justin did lead the club through responsible financial management as CEO, and did take the club from a precarious position financially to a strong position financially. So I think that's one thing he can hold his head high on. And I think also, the other obvious one that everyone would talk about is the Centre of Excellence, which he pushed through extremely well. And it's obviously part of his makeup and his skill set that he can lobby and can negotiate with other parties and get the job done in that regard. And he's done that really well. And, I do agree with you, though, Joel, that 9 years is... I actually... That surprised me when you said that, 9 years. I didn't realise it was that long. I think at governance level, sometimes you need to come to the realisation, and CEO, which is not quite governance, I suppose, but you need to come to the realisation that it's not your club, it's not your organisation. You are there for others that have the passion for it, and you might develop that as well. But at the end of the day, you're there to do a job and you don't own the organisation as such, and therefore you need to know when you've done the best you can do, and that time is up, and it's time for fresh ideas, a fresh approach. And I was going to say that could be the case. Well, it's been proven, right across it, that now is the time, right at governance level, for that change.
I think what we got with Justin Pascoe was a guy who was able to right the ship. So we were in severe financial trouble all through the early 2010s and right up until he joined our club. There were times where we couldn't pay suppliers and were struggling to pay players. All these things happened at our club. Now, yes, there's been a large influx of money from the NRL into clubs, but as Steve said, he righted that ship. But sometimes I go back to that old analogy that there's a difference between a wartime prime minister and a peacetime prime minister. And I think that's where we're at now. I think Justin did a great job of riding the ship. Our financial situation has never been better, but we're still not winning football games. So now's the time, perfect time to bring in a guy like Shane Richardson, who has success at building a club into a strong football club, into a team that's winning games and winning premierships. And I think that's the type of leader we need in our club now. Someone who can take that good financial position that we're now in and turn that into a healthy position on the field, because that's where we're falling down now. That's where the issues are now. And as I said, I'm not going to sit here and can people who have and kick people who have lost their jobs today. That's a huge thing in anyone's life. He's contributed to our club. He's brought good things to our club. But now's time for us to have a different type of leader. And I'm really thrilled with the appointment of Shane Richardson. I think, even though it's only an interim position at this point in time, I think he brings a skill set that is sorely been lacking at our club and gives me a lot of confidence moving forward that we're going to see not just a financially sound football club, but a football club that starts to win games.
Yeah, we'll talk about the interim CEO and chairman in a moment or two. Kelly, I think the other thing that makes me feel good this evening is knowing that moving forward, our chairman and our major sponsor are, hopefully not going to be the same person. I think that's a breath of fresh air, I think, getting out of that situation. That's how I feel. Do you feel that same sort of relief?
Yeah, I feel like some West Tigers supporters are just, they don't know how to be positive about anything at the moment. Like from years of dealing with of what we've sort of been through, and a few people were like, "Oh, so what now happens if Lee takes his money and walks?" And I said, "Well, there is a contract in place that runs out at the end of 2024 as anyway already. But if he chooses to take his money, then that's Lee's choice." But from what Justin was saying, very similar to what Garry was mentioning before about Justin working towards bringing the club into a better position financially, Justin has mentioned to us on a couple of occasions that they've, at some points, actually had to turn sponsors away because they just didn't have either the jersey space or the short space or whatever kind of level of sponsorship these sponsors wanted. So I think, if that happens, then that happens. But I think, as you said, it's a great opportunity to move away from that conflict of interest of having your major sponsor also have the sort of a major role on the board.
Declan, I'll let you have your say because we've heard these counterpoints and we've heard the positives about the centre of excellence and stability, and we've kept the sponsors on board and paid the bills, etc. But the legacy of Lee and Justin, how do you think it will be remembered in coming years?
Well, I think that's the real. I think it's at this point in time, I think it's important not to be too harsh on them because I'm sure they've tried to the best of their ability, and I'm sure at no point did I ever think that they didn't have the best of West Tigers at heart. But you'd have to be honest here and say that it has been a decade of failure with some good things. Obviously, the centre of excellence is definitely a good thing, the financial stability, but we just haven't won 30 games, and I think at the end of the day, that's what the West Tigers should be in the business of doing, and they just haven't been able to do that. So I don't think they'll be remembered too fondly, unfortunately. But I do think that I've had the pleasure of meeting Justin Pascoe, and he's a really nice guy. He took time to talk to us about the club's plans, and I wish him all the best in his future endeavours. And nothing personal, but you have to say the legacy isn't going to be great. When we review all this stuff in a few years, I'm definitely keen to see how Tales from Tiger Town, how that tracks in the years to come after the board changes. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Steve, we've spoken about the changes. We're all pretty chuffed about it, but we've got to absolutely 100% recognise that it wasn't. And you came up with the idea of the review. You're ultimately responsible for all of this. But
if it goes bad, Steve, we're blaming you.
Exactly. Yep. But we have to say, a big thank you to People Power. It was our fellow West Tigers fans that got on there and signed that petition. And we've all had a hand. Everybody that supported that petition have had a hand in these changes, and I think that's fantastic to see. Going back to Kelly's word, unification. That this is the fan base. I think's changed a little.
Yeah, I think that's right, Joel. And I think whilst we don't want to kick people when they're down, and we say that Holland Barnes have done the right thing in the last 24 hours, I just think that this thing gained so much momentum that they didn't have a choice. They really didn't. They had to do the right thing. They knew every single comment on social media. Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit. A lot of comments on social media were all saying, "I'm not renewing memberships. I'm done. I'm not going to games." Like the fan base was going. You know, it was, if it wasn't gone, it was going. And the Holland Barnes just really, when the review came down and the recommendations were put forth, they had no alternative but to go with them, because there would have been absolute furor to the point of the destruction of the club if they had ignored them. So they didn't have a choice, and that's because of the fans. And you know, and unlike that scribe of a journalist, David Riccio, who just called us fans on the hill who were doing a terrible thing, People Power actually did win out, and I think the reason for that is, one, because of the numbers. We are over 2,000. That's a good level. But also, I think, and we're patting ourselves on the back here a little bit, we presented the petition and our ideas and our concerns in a mature way, I think, and a professional way. And that was well received by West Ashfield and Holman Barnes. And I think the majority of comments that people made when they filled out the petition were also constructive and well thought through, and not just negative and bashing someone, you know. And I think that level of constructiveness went a long way for them to take this petition seriously. And then, you know, the other guys took over with actually the review, and that was done incredibly thoroughly.
For me, that's a major point. I think our fan base has achieved a result here without getting really nasty about people in our club, without abusing people in our club. I know there's segments of the fan base that has done that, but for the major part, I think our fan base has approached this in a really positive manner and demanded change, but haven't really been personal to people involved in the club. And I think that's something that, as a fan base, we can be really proud of. You have a look at things that happen with elections at other clubs. You look at the Bulldogs and Parramatta, what they go through just when they're having board elections. And we had a lot tougher situation. And the way our fan base has gone about this and brought about this change, I think is a commendation for the entire fan base. And I'm so pleased that the fan base got the result that it did today, because this is a fan base that has suffered for a long time. And I think we're all going to go back to that word Kelly said of unity. This is finally a day where we can really unite this fan base that has come from two clubs. So it's come from two parent clubs and all the younger people who have started supporting the club since the merger. Hopefully this is a day where that fan base can finally properly become united.
Just, further to that, Gary, I think you just need to listen to the podcast that you had people ring in and give their thoughts and their feelings on the last couple of years of the club, as well as the fan forum that we ran through the ambush and the feedback we got through the Google form that we put out for people to express their concerns about the club. And as you said, not once was there name calling or finger pointing. It was really just people who were genuinely love this club and genuinely want the club to do well. And you could hear that through people's voices, through their emotions, when they were sharing their stories of how they became a supporter, whether it was Balmain, whether it was West, or whether it was since the merger. And I think that's really what's made me feel a bit warm and fuzzy today, is that the people who have put their heart and soul into this club outside of, you know, present company, we're hopefully going to see some positive in the future, just off the back of this.
And that's the thing. This is a day to celebrate for all West Tigers fans. It's not just... I know we started a petition and we've spoken about it a lot on the pod, and we were fortunate enough to get to speak to the review team. But all those comments on the petition were forwarded on to the review team as well. They went through all those comments on the petition. The 2 episodes we did, the ambush forum that we did down the beer shed in Campbelltown. The recording of that was passed on the review team and was listened to. The fan forum we had where we had some fans come on and speak about their relationship with the club at this point in time, that was passed on to the review team. So this was a lot of voices being heard throughout our club and throughout our fan base. And the support that this petition received from our fan base and those podcasts received from the fan base and that forum received from the fan base, that's what led to this change. And I'm really grateful for everyone who signed the petition, everyone who got themselves involved in this, everyone who shared the petition because it was shared quite widely. It's a great result for everyone who signed the petition, participated in any way they could. This is a big day for the West Tigers.
And can I add to that, in that, using a football analogy, I reckon we got a penalty, right, and we tapped the ball. We tapped the ball, and then we passed it on to the review team, and Garry and Tony, and they're the ones that hit the defensive line, and they did the hard yards. And I would imagine, I don't know, but just from what we've picked up, in the media over the last month, I would imagine that they've had to work pretty hard and really show some intestinal fortitude over this last month. And it was kicked off with the petition, and that's all most important. Without that, we're nowhere. But I think what they've done since then to negotiate change is pretty incredible, and it can't get lost in this whole process. They really did the hard yards, I think.
And let's just hope we don't need another review for a very, very long time, because things are firing on all cylinders.
We don't want another one ever again.
Exactly. All right, Declan, let's start looking forward. In a couple of weeks' time, there's a new interim CEO. He's a guy that fills me with a whole lot of confidence. He's experienced. He's achieved a lot in the game. Shane Richardson. Declan, what should be some of his top priorities when he gets his feet under the desk, do you think?
I think that definitely, because it was interesting that it's just an interim role at the moment now. As Garry said, that would probably, you'd like to think that could potentially come into a substantive role. I'm not too sure, but I think in terms of priorities at the moment, I think it's probably just to support Benji Marshall in the best way you can. Because I saw an interesting Chalmers piece where I think he was on the radio just before we came on, where this is potentially detrimental for Benji Marshall, because it's kind of taking the all the support that his established around him from under him. And Joe's nodding his head, and I agree, because Chalmers says the nice piece for Lee and Pascoe, so that makes sense. But I think in principle, I think that there is a point to that, and I'd really love Richardson just to get behind Benji Marshall, just support him, make sure that he knows that has, in terms of how he sets to the club, that hasn't changed. It's just he's still the man to take us in charge, because I think that's going to be the most important thing to do, kind of short to medium term.
The big thing for me is I don't see it as really taking away support from Benji Marshall. My issue with our club has been our inability to stick to a direction. And who's to say that we're halfway through next season and the side's struggling, because we haven't really made huge grounds in our signings, and whether that support that's there now would still be there in 6 months' time, because we've seen this club too many times in the past change direction within 6 months. So what I want to see now is a strong club that can stick to its strategic plans, can set strategic plans that are appropriate moving forward, and then push them through and work on them and get this club moving in one direction, instead of 6 months' time, we turn around and go back another way. That's why this is a big day, because it gives us our opportunity to set those structures right.
Yeah, it was really interesting, because there's all these clips coming, because I think Richardson did an interview with James Graham on his podcast a few months ago, and he actually mentioned how the West Tigers, they do themselves a really big disservice by, always going after that big fish and never really landing them, but never really bringing local juniors up to fill the squad. So that's really fascinating for me, because that kind of situation that he was talking about as a hypothetical kind of plays exactly into what we're doing with Luai and Adam Finno-Blake right now. So I know it's only an interim role, but if you take what he said on that podcast there might be a little bit of doubt as to whether we still pursue those guys as heavily. So that's going to be something really interesting to see. And he also said that he's really big on the Tigers investing 100% in Campbelltown because of the reason we've all spoken about how it's a really big catchment area. So I think that's also something to flag for as he settles into the job.
Kelly, just staying with Shane Richardson, like going through the history of the West Tigers and looking at the CEOs that we've had, I don't think we've ever had a CEO, and I know it's, again, only in an interim capacity. We don't know what the plan is here, but we've never had a CEO that brings this much experience and success to the table. No,
I'm going to be completely honest, and the name was a definite new one to me until I did a little bit of research after the announcement. I'm a small amount, I will admit as well. But the number of people who were saying how great an appointment it is, and just hearing from Declan just then with what he's heard, and the plan is to listen to the buy round episode with James Graham because and I can never get it right, NBWT on Twitter, he was putting quotes from the interview onto Twitter earlier today, and I just think it's exactly the kind of person that we need in this role, whether it is only interim, whether it does turn into something more long-term. We need somebody who can help to start driving the football side in the right direction. And as we know, everybody's concerned about Benji being a rookie coach. Having somebody with so much experience in the rugby league world is only going to support him in that way as well.
And Steve, further to that, I mean, Barry O'Farrell, he only held the chair position for 12 months, but how good is it that you could bring somebody into the role that's familiar with the club and has held that position before? Again, only maybe potentially as an interim, but in terms of where the West Tigers are at, that's a steadying influence as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I think it is a steady influence, and he has a passion for West Tigers as well, which is a positive. But, you know, Barry O'Farrell, with his experience, the first thing, you know, as a chairman, you know, he's well connected. You know, he's been around for a long time in high circles, so he's going to be well connected, and that's got to be useful for us. You want to think that he's good at people management and conflict resolution, and, you know, from what we hear, and again, it's just media speculation, I suppose, but there's a little bit of conflict in the West Tigers, and maybe someone who can get two people in a room and get them on the same page is a good thing. I think Barry O'Farrell is a good choice. Whether it's for 6 months or 5 years, I don't know. But we've got two highly experienced people that are proven in their roles. And, that's got to be good.
Garry, we've had a lot of change. There's been a lot of change in this club in the last 3 or 4 years. Football managers, coaches, you name it, player turnover, and now the board, everything has changed. 2024 is going to be a challenge for these guys that have got these jobs to bring this club together and to make sure that the identity is solid and that we find that right identity.
Yeah, for me, I think it is really important that I think this is a fresh start for the club. I think we need a little bit of time. I don't think the results on the field are going to be fantastic next year. I can't see us making the top 8 next year with the roster that we have at this point in time. So I think what's really important is give this club the opportunity to reset itself, because that's what today is. It's a reset. The amount of change in our club today is huge. I can't remember a time where a club has lost not only its entire board but its CEO in the one day. That is a huge, huge change up in our club, and it's probably something that's going to take our club a little bit of time to get sorted and to get over, because it's taken a lot out of the club. There's things I spoke a couple of weeks ago about the importance of corporate memory. That a lot of that has been lost in our club, and yes, you can say our club's been unsuccessful for the last 10 years, so what's the point of hanging on to those sort of things? But there's a lot of things that are going to be new to the people coming into our club, and I do think that it is going to take a little bit of time for us still to see the results of this, but this is the first step. This is the first step on getting our club not just to a club that flukes making the semi-finals every 10 years, which we have so far in our existence, It's about getting a club that is successful long term. And I think it's going to take a lot of work and still a lot of time yet to get everything exactly right. But I think it's important that this step is made. And I think it's important that our fan base now gets on board and gets fully behind this club, no matter what the results are next year, and give this club time and the opportunity to become the club it should be.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Garry in the aspect of it's important that we all get behind the club now, and I'd like to throw out that that if people are able to do so, that they sign up or re-sign as members and show that unity. But I'm going to disagree about the giving the time a little bit. I think one of the things that needs to happen as these two guys take control of the club is that the word mediocrity is never mentioned in the organisation again, that we don't accept anything except absolute excellence. We've talked about this before. Every Monday morning, what did we do last week that wasn't excellent, and how do we make it excellent? And I think that needs to be the standard that is set. That's the standard that's set at the good clubs. That's the way the Panthers operate. I would imagine that's the way a club like the Storm operates. That's the way a club like the Roosters operates. If you're not getting excellence, right, you're out the door. Like Pearce at the Roosters was out the door. A good player. He wasn't excellent. He's out the door. They got someone who was excellent. They want a comp. Standards of excellence are absolutely essential. And to me, that means there's no more excuses. I'm sick of hearing the argument, the roster's not strong enough. We've got 30 players that are professional footballers. There are some extremely good footballers in that squad. If we don't get ravaged by injury, and have a whole lot of bad luck in that regard, there is no reason those players shouldn't have a goal to make the 8 next year, and we as fans have an expectation that they make the 8 next year. And I don't think there's any point in going into a season without that attitude. But that's just my thinking.
Steve, you've been involved in governance change in schools. How many schools, despite the changes, turn it around overnight?
It's not about turning. It's not about the level.
It's about
of
putting the processes in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Putting the processes in place, and yes, we need to start accepting excellence.
Yeah,
but the results of that excellence isn't necessarily seen.
But you've got to have an expectation that you will succeed. And success at NRL level is making the top 8. So making the top 8 is 50%, right? So if you want to put it in educational terms, it's grabbing a C, right? That's all it is. It's not not the most. We're not talking about coming top of the ladder, coming first, winning the minor premiership. We're talking about making the 8. Now I know we came last. I get that, and we've come last twice. But I believe that we've got a decent squad. I do. And I think if we can have a bit of luck, not get hit by injury, that we can make the 8, and that should be the expectation from all of us.
Steve, you know about setting smart goals. Smart goals are measurable, they're achievable, and there's also a process along them. There's milestones along the way to your main goal. And that's where we're at right now. We've got to put the structures in place to become successful long term. That's not something that changes overnight. That's not something that you can measure. You don't come from being one of the worst performing organisations in an industry to being up the top of the industry just by saying our expectations are this. It's about setting achievable and measurable goals along the way. And that's where we're at the moment. And that's why I still think it's going to be a little bit of time before we're the club we want to be.
So let's use your SMART goal as an example. And the first part of SMART goal is be specific, right? So we're going to be specific now. What's your specific goal? So what you're saying, the goal is going to become 9th. Is that the goal? Because it needs to be specific.
It does need to be specific. You got me.
Yeah.
But you also can't say we're going to go from achieving it 10% to achieving it.
So what's your specific goal?
Overnight.
9th, 10th, 11th?
Mate, I want to see an improvement out of the bottom 4.
That's not specific. That's too vague. What's specific?
Well, it's no.
Top 8 is specific.
No, so's position 8 to 12.
So that's your goal?
Mate, if we make 8 to 12 next year, I'm immensely happy with the squad that we've got right now and the position we're coming from. That's a milestone towards becoming a top 8 side. That's a milestone from becoming a premiership contender.
I rest my case, Joel.
Steve's channeling his inner Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. This organisation doesn't accept failure.
Who could have thought on a pod that we're celebrating today some significant change at our club that Steve and I would get in an argument over it?
Exactly.
We've been too nice to each other for way too long, Gary. You know that.
Yeah.
You've been on the same page for too long. Exactly. It is very exciting. To quote another movie, another bit out of a movie would be Darth Vader saying, "This will be a day long remembered. It's seen the end of Kenobi, and soon it will mark the end of the Rebel Alliance." And that's the way I feel. It's going to be a day long remembered, I think, this one. And I think it is the recharge that we've all needed. I think the fan base has really, really been struggling especially the last 6 months, 12 months, not just with the on-field performances, but with all the theatrics as well. So hopefully things are looking a little brighter and we get these professional people in that can bring their skill sets and make change and look at things through a new set of eyes, which is always a good thing. So dare I say it, I'm feeling a little more optimistic, and that's always a very dangerous place to be as a West Tigers fan. Anything to add, people? Yes, Declan.
So are we the Empire in your little analogy there? Is that?
I would have thought we were the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought as well.
I think the Empire kind of had a track record
It's
of getting...
just because Joel relates to Emperor Palpatine. That's what it is.
That's right. Exactly. Now, let's not even talk about episode 9. That's a whole other thing. All right, people. We'll leave it there.
Can I just quickly...
Thanks, guys.
Go, Kelly.
Sorry,
before
Kelly.
we go, Declan mentioned earlier about supporting the MacArthur region and really working on improving engagement out here. Well, the boys, the whole team will be at MacArthur Square on Thursday night, apparently, for a meet and greet from 6 till 7. And the Raw store will be at MacArthur Square for a couple of nights this week as well for people to buy merchandise leading into Christmas. So,
fantastic. Good to see. And we didn't talk about Noffa, but let's not go there. That may be on the next edition of the podcast.
I don't think there'd be any arguments about it, though.
No.
Exactly. Yeah. See you guys.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.